Hi, I'm Ken Troup. Today I'm talking with Bolton Town Moderator Jim Anker. Jim has chosen not to seek re-election after 11 years. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Ken.
If you would, could you tell us about your decision to leave?
Well, Susan and I came to Bolton in 1990 from New York, and for the last 24 years, this has been our home. We have established our lives here. In fact, we've each lived here longer than either of us have lived anywhere in our lives. And we have spent most of our lives together here. I've, of course, gotten involved in town government over those 24 years, for 23 to 24 years. Susan has been involved in various things in town as well. And we also, professionally, I had started a publishing business, right about the time that we got here. And Susan had a job with one of the big publishing houses in Boston that she started with and then left and became a very successful textbook author on her own. And in the last few years, I had the opportunity to sell my business to one of the large New York publishing houses. And Susan's textbooks have become very well established in their market to the extent that she was able to back off those and have other people take over a lot of the work on those, so that now we are both pretty much retired and have been traveling more and more and spending less and less time in Bolton, to the point where we realized we're just not here enough to really call this home anymore. And it was a very difficult decision to decide to make a move. And it's been a very emotional process for us because we've been so deeply rooted here for so long. But we're at that stage in our lives where we're very fortunate to be able to make a change, a good change for us. We'll be spending part of our lives in Massachusetts on Cape Cod and part of our lives in western Colorado, and spending a lot of time doing outdoor stuff, which we're very, very keen on. But it's tough. It's tough leaving Bolton. We've established ourselves here very deeply over those 24 years and had a lot of really, really good people and have some wonderful relationships. But we decided it was time for us at this stage in our lives to make a transition and move on to something else.
Now, you mentioned that you'd gotten involved with town government fairly early on. There may be some folks that aren't aware of what you did before you were moderator, but why don't you tell us a little about, partly, I guess, how you even ended up being moderator, but,
sure.
But what'd you do before that even?
Sure. Well, I mentioned we moved here from New York and had made a decision when we made the move here to get away from an urban setting and to look for a more country setting. And so we looked up and down Route 495, decided we really liked Bolton, and in the spring of 1990, we moved into our house here. I went to my first town meeting that May, about a month later, and I was just fascinated with the town meeting process, that anybody who was registered to vote in town could come to this meeting, could speak, could hear what other people had to say, and then could vote and actually make a difference. Every single person could make a difference as to what happened to the town, whether we passed the budget, whether we bought something, whether we didn't buy something, whether a new bylaw was created or not. And I was just fascinated by the real hands-on, pure democracy that the town meeting represented, and the people. I was very impressed with the people. So I decided, I'd been here a month at that point, I decided I'd like to get involved in this being town government, this town. And so the following year, leading up to the following year, I had talked to various people about what I might do in town government, being newish to town and with a background in book publishing, which is neither here nor there as far as town government goes. and found that there was going to be an opening on the library board, which actually was very appropriate for me, being in the book business and very fond of reading and libraries. So I ran for the position on the library board, was elected to two terms on the library board, and then, well, in fact, much at your prompting, if not entirely at your prompting, I decided to take a run for the Board of Selectmen when that second library term was up.
I remember that.
Yeah. You were on the board a long time, and you and I had gotten to know each other and done some things together in town government. And so I ran for the selectmen and served 2 terms, 6 years on the Board of Selectmen. And at that point, my business was very busy, and I needed to spend more and more time working on my business. But I wanted to maintain a role in town government. And going back to my fascination with town meeting, decided that if the town moderator position were to become open, I'd be very interested in running for that. And as it turns out, the moderator at the time was thinking about leaving. He and I had a discussion about it, and it was a very smooth transition for me to leave the Board of Selectmen and transition into running for the office of town moderator, which I've done for the last 11 years.
What was the most difficult town meeting experience you've had as moderator, would you say?
Ah, geez. I wouldn't call any of them difficult. They're all...
That's good, because it certainly seemed to me to be, but that's good.
No, it depends how you look at it. The town meeting process is a very engaged, should be a very engaged process of people attending and speaking and voting ultimately. And the warrant, the articles, the agenda items for a town meeting will determine to a large extent how many people attend and how energized they may be about whatever topic it is that's being discussed and voted on at the meeting. And it varies a lot. And some meetings have been fairly routine and low-key. Others, where there are big issues, tend to be very energized, and people can get very worked up and emotional, and that's just part of the process. I'd say one of the most challenging town meetings for me as moderator, and I think for people attending the meeting, was a couple falls ago. We had a special town meeting at the Florence Sawyer School auditorium. Typically, as you know, we meet in the high school auditorium, which is big, and the configuration has a couple of aisles for people to move up and down. The Florence, because this was a special town meeting in the fall, the timing didn't work that the high school was available, so we ended up at Florence Sawyer, which I and everybody else involved thought would be plenty big and would pose no difficulties at all as far as getting people in there and having an orderly town meeting. As it turns out, we had a huge attendance, way more people than I or anybody else had expected, so that we had people standing up, lining the...
I remember that.
Lined up against the walls. The fire chief had to step in and consult with me at one point to be sure that everybody was back and not blocking any of the walkways. And that was one of those very energetic meetings too. So we had a lot of discussion and a lot of emotion going on at that meeting too. It was also very crowded. It got kind of warm, and we had several counted votes. As you know, most votes at town meeting are voice votes. I just listen and can call it. But we had several that were counted, where the tellers actually had to go out and count people in these sections, and with them all lined up on the aisles and against the wall, it was a little more difficult. But we managed. Democracy was exercised, and the town's business was done, and life went on. But I'd say that comes to mind as the most challenging
Yeah.
as far as managing a town meeting goes.
Yeah, I probably would have picked that one too. Is that where you started reading from Bolton history? Or was that another time?
That actually goes back a ways. One of my first or second town meeting when we were having a counted vote, which takes longer, of course, because all the ayes hold their tickets up and they have to be counted, and then the noes hold their tickets up and have to be counted. And there was just this lull of quiet while the counters, the tellers, are out counting people. And after that, I mean, it really was like my first or second town meeting. After that, I thought, gee, there must be something we can do here too, other than playing the Jeopardy theme, that we could fill this dead air while people are just sitting there with their hands up or waiting to put their hands up. So I scrounged around in my bookshelf and found a copy of About Bolton, the history of Bolton, and started at home, started highlighting sections of that and flagging them so that when we had counted votes in the future, I actually would do readings from About Bolton, little bits and pieces of Bolton history, interesting, sometimes humorous, that filled in that quiet time while all those votes were being counted. Interestingly, our town clerk and all the tellers who do the counts have gotten very efficient in the last few years in doing their counts. And they've been able to do it much faster. So I've done fewer readings from About Bolton. People have even asked me about that. But that's how it started. And I've had quite a few comments from people who say they appreciate hearing. I never even knew about that. But
yeah, no, they're fun.
I appreciate hearing about some of the history of
That's
the
good.
Yeah.
Well, is there one incident or one thing that, and I would include all of your town government service, that you would consider to be the highlight or your principal accomplishment or something like that? Is there one thing that stands out in your mind from a positive point of view?
The first thing that comes to mind is I have just been overwhelmed with how many really, really good people I've had the chance to work with in Bolton Town government, elected, appointed voters, townspeople, in my roles as trustee and selectman and moderator. I'd say the highest point of all the 23 years I've been doing all this is just the people, all the great people I've had the opportunity to work with. I mean, we're really fortunate in our town to have so many good people willing to step up and volunteer to serve in town government. One thing that does come to mind after that is something I actually did more as a private citizen than in any of my roles as an elected official. And that was to bring to town at the May 1995 annual town meeting, I brought to town a proposal for our senior tax rebate program.
Oh, I remember that.
Which is, I was on the library board at that point, and you were on the select. Mm-hmm. That was the time where the town was considering building and or renovating a new elementary school that became the Florence Sawyer School. That was another very big project in town, of course, and as big projects tend to do, generated a lot of discussion and different points of view on what should be done and how and for how much and where. One of the issues that was overriding all of that was the tax impact. I mean, there's nothing new about that. And what concerned me is that particularly senior citizens living on fixed incomes would see a pretty good bump in their taxes. And I had the sense that many of them supported a new school, but they just had difficulty dealing with the potential increase in taxes. So I decided to start looking around for any kind of ways that, any kind of programs or ways that those folks in town might be able to get a tax break. And in doing so, I found in a couple other states programs where people, senior citizens, could work for the town and earn tax credit for their property taxes, so that they benefited by getting a break on their taxes. The town benefited by getting some good townspeople to help out in town offices. And I did actually a fair amount of research on that. Brought it to the town meeting, sponsored by myself and the Board of Selectmen, which you were on at that point, and it was overwhelmingly voted that we should do it, and it's become quite established in town since then. So that comes to mind after all the people I've worked with. And of course, there are many other things. The library, when I was on the library board, we started, this goes back 20 years or so, started the process of doing the paperwork to apply for funding to do a library renovation. And although my part in that was small, that did come to happen with the efforts of many other people, much greater efforts than mine, certainly, with many other people. And a whole lot of other things we did on the Board of Selectmen. And I hope that I have served well as town moderator in Bolton, so that we've had fairly efficient, well-run, interesting town meetings. But the main thing about them, and to go back to your question about the high point or highlight, is really the people. It's been an amazing part of my life to have worked with so many great people here in town.
That's great. Now, one of those people, as we all know, Richard Fly is running for your position to replace you, and I think you appointed him as assistant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't think he ever actually had to perform the duty. But anyway, what advice or pointers do you have for Richard, and then I guess whenever he's finished with anybody who would want to be moderator, what advice would you give him based on what you've done?
Yeah. Actually, after that challenging town meeting I mentioned at the Florence Sawyer School, I realized it would be beneficial for us to have an assistant town moderator whose role primarily is to operate a satellite room. If there's an overflow town meeting, assistant moderator runs the satellite room. Interestingly, since then, we've never had to, as you say, we never had to.
Now, was there one at that meeting? I don't remember.
No, that was part of the problem.
There needed to be, but there wasn't.
Yes, we did not have a room we could go to that was wired. It has, at the minimum, has to be wired for sound and ideally for video as well. And we didn't have either. So we made do with the situation we had that night. But it occurred to me that even if we did, we didn't have an assistant moderator on hand to handle that. So I advertised and interviewed and appointed Richard for that, and got him to start reading about and start thinking about the role of town moderator, perhaps more than he had before. But for him or anybody else coming into the role of town moderator, I think anyone who runs for that position has self-selected already in that they believe in town meeting and believe it's an institution that serves us well and that should continue and that should be run as, I hope, I believe should be run as well as it can be for all the people involved. The most complaints I've heard about town meetings from voters, people have come, is just the time involved, and that's totally understandable. I mean, it doesn't happen very often during the year, but it takes a lot of time. So running a smooth, learning to run a smoothly running, well-functioning meeting where people have a reasonable chance for everybody to say what needs to be said, what they want to say, and then to vote on the issues that come before them is important. It's important to be fair, unbiased, totally objective for all points of view, and being a moderator is still human and still has his or her own points of view on things, but you have to set that aside. When you're standing up there on the stage and running the show, you have to stay totally objective and totally fair. And be sure everybody has the right, as I said, has the opportunity to speak. Everybody has the right to speak. There's not always the opportunity if there are a lot of people, because there's just a time issue. Town meeting is the legislative body of town government, so there are certain laws, mass general laws and local bylaws that have to be followed, have to be adhered to. And it's important that we do that, because everything after the town meeting, all our votes, the town clerk sends all our votes to the state to be blessed or not. And we want to be sure everything has been conducted properly. Mostly, though, it's being fair, objective, even-handed, and trying to balance letting people speak, letting people say what they want to say, with running an efficient, smooth meeting so that it doesn't wander all over the place or take any longer than it really needs to. And just believe in it. It's really, I mean, I do. It's just one of the few remaining pure forms of democracy that we see in our country. I firmly believe in it.
Other than to keep coming to the meetings, what would you say to the voters? What do you think, well, what would you like to see them do going forward, or giving advice to them?
Coming to the meetings is the first thing. There's a saying, I think it's attributed to Woody Allen, that 95% of life is just showing up. And that's certainly true in elections and certainly true at town meetings. It's the people who show up who make the decisions for everybody else. And we have one annual town meeting a year, and we'll have maybe one, possibly two special town meetings in any given year. So you're looking basically at one or two town meetings in a year, and each one will run usually about 3 hours or so. People are busy. They have lives, they have work, they have families, they have houses to take care of, they have everything they need to deal with, but it's important to show up. It helps, definitely, if people have read the warrant, the agenda for the town meeting, so that they have an idea of what's going to be discussed and what's going to be voted. If there is a certain topic or topics that they're particularly interested in, it helps to read the paper, to attend meetings, to read what's going on in the papers.
Watch it on TV. That's TV. Right. That's what I was going to say. Watch it on TV.
Watch Bolton Access TV. Stay at home so that you have some idea of what discussion has been going on about the various topics that are coming up. If you want to say something as a voter, or want to ask something as a voter, you can do that at town meeting. You can get up front and come to the microphone and state an opinion, state why you believe in something that's before the meeting, why we should do this or why we shouldn't do it. That's part of the process, and really people like to hear what other people have to say. And if you have a question, you can come up to the microphone and say, we're talking about this, I don't really understand what this part of it is. Can someone answer that? And of course everything goes through the moderator, so I would call on whoever's appropriate, usually a board member, a committee member, to respond, or if they'd like to respond. It's up to them whether they do. And vote. Showing up and voting, ultimately. You got to get there in the first place and then vote. No one is required to vote, actually, when you come to town meeting. We expect you to. We hope you will. Occasionally, someone will, like with a count of votes, someone will say to me, can't you just count one side and you know how many people registered, so you just subtract that and you got the difference? Well, no, you can't, because everybody doesn't vote on every motion that's before the meeting. So you actually have to count these things and hear what people have to say and count those who vote. But participate. Just be informed and participate.
Well, we certainly appreciate all that you've done, all those 23 years,
Well, thank you.
and look forward to the upcoming town meeting for your last one. Hopefully that's
Yes.
not going to be too controversial, but
There should be some energy in the room that night. There are some things on the warrant that I think have got people interested, so it should be good. It's always good.
well, Jim Anker, thanks very much
Thank you, Ken.
for coming in.
It's a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.